Hello and welcome back to the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're going to take a look at all the new spoiled cards from the wilds of Eldraine. We got a ton of new spoilers for day one, way more than I expected, and let's just dive right in there. And we got a whole bunch of different kinds of spoilers. Remember, we have commander deck spoilers, we have these Enchanting Tale cards along with the main set, so there's really a lot to look at. So starting off, we're going to look at commander because we have the least amount of cards in this, where they showed off the co-commanders and face commanders for all the different decks. So starting off, we have Aliyah, Cunning Conqueror, and Elivir of the Wild Court. Aliyah, Cunning Conqueror is a legendary fairy warlock with flying. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal combat damage to a player, go target creature that player controls. This card is all about casting spells on your opponent's turn and using those fairies to make your opponents swing into each other. This is a pretty cool card and I really like the design. Elivir of the Wild Court, legendary human knight. Whenever Elivir of the Wild Court enters the battlefield or attacks, create a virtuous roll token attached to another target creature you control. Whenever an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to player, draw a card. Well, this is a great time to bring these up because we have these really cool roll cards that are brand new in the Wild of Eldraine, and it takes an interesting look at enchantment. Enchantment auras are kind of this weird kind of card type that you can play on your opponent's stuff, you can play on your own stuff, and you can get a lot of value off it or make your opponents suffer from whatever you put on it. And this set brings a whole new idea to these enchantment auras by calling them rolls, and there's all kinds of different rolls. So starting off, we have Wicked Roll, a Cursed Roll, a Monster Roll, a Sorcerer Roll, a Royal Roll, and a Young Hero Roll, along with some other rolls, but these are the main ones you're going to see throughout the set. Each of them has its own benefit and strategy, and it's a really cool idea. You're going to see a lot more of these cards as we go through them, so just keep this in mind as we go on. But the Virtuous Roll is really cool because enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each other enchantment you control, meaning whenever this enters or attacks, you can put this on a creature and your creature gets buffed based on the number of enchantments you control. Whether you're playing an Enchantress deck or just blinking or swinging in with this a lot, you can basically create a big board. And whenever an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage, you draw a card. It is whenever an enchanted creature, not just one or more. So you could end up drawing a lot of cards off of this. Next up, we have Galwain Casting Director and Tegwyl Duke of Splendor. Galwain Casting Director is a human bard with whenever Galwain Casting Director or another non-token enters the battlefield under control, choose one. Create a Royal Roll token and attach to that creature. Create a Sorcerer Roll token and attach to that creature, or a Monster Roll token and attach it to that creature. This is pretty interesting. You can build around a different role or maybe multiple roles at the same time to benefit your deck. This gives a lot of opportunity to kind of customize this commander as you play more and more. And Tegwyl Duke of Splendor is a fairy noble with flying and death touch, and other fairies you control get +1/+1. Whenever another fairy you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life. There's not as many, but there are a lot of ways to make these fairy tokens, and you can end up drawing a lot of cards and losing life, but buffing all of your fairies at the same time, this seems very, very good. Now let's just dive into this main set and check out what kind of new cards we got. There are cards of all different types. We have a lot of new adventure cards. We have pretty much a little bit of everything with some alternate arts kind of showing you what the set's going to be, even though it's a little inconsistent. There's not like a true theme to it yet, so I'm really interested to see once we get all of the art how that kind of comes together. But first off, we have Neva, Stalked by Nightmares, and Obra, Dreaming Duelist. Neva is a menace creature with when Neva, Stalked by Nightmares, enters battlefield, return target creature or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty cool recursion piece. And whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on her, and then scry 1. Obira, Dreaming Duelist, has flash and flying, and whenever another fairy enters battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life. Pretty cool fairy card. Basically, whenever you pump them out, your opponents are going to pay for it. This is a really, really cool card, and I could see a really powerful deck being built out of this. Next up is Catcher Trainee, Rat Out, and Realm Scorch Hellkite. Catcher Trainee is our adventure card today with Pest Problem, 2 and a red, instant. Create 2 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this creature can't block. And then the creature part is as long as it's your turn, Catcher Trainee has first strike. Rat Out, another rat card, has up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. You create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. And finally, Realm Scorcher Hellkite has Bargain. This is a new mechanic, I believe, coming to this set, but you may sack an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell. Flying in haste. When Realm Scorcher Hellkite enters the battlefield. If it was bargained, add 4 mana in any combination of colors. 1 in a red, Realm Scorcher Hellkite deals 1 damage to any target. We're going to see more of this bargain mechanic as we continue on, but basically by sacking artifact, enchantment, or token, you can get some great value. Seems pretty worthwhile. Next up, we have Restless Cottage, Return from the Wilds, and Root Rider Fawn. Restless Cottage is another land card that turns into a creature similar to the one they showed off already. This enters battlefield tapped in, taps for a black or green, and for 2 black green, Restless Cottage becomes a 4/4 black and green horror creature until end of turn. It's still a land. Whenever Relentless Cottage attacks, create a food token and exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. This seems like a pretty powerful deck. I could definitely see me playing this in my Greasefang deck because we can exile cards from our opponents, which is pretty good. In addition, it turns into a 4/4 creature, which that can pilot some stuff, so this might be worth adding. Return from the Wilds is 2 and a green sorcery. Choose 2. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Create a 1/1 white human creature token, or create a food token. Seems pretty fun. Maybe I'll play it. And Root Rider Fawn, 1 and a green, taps to add a green, or 1 tap, add 1 mana of any color. Not super great, but it's a common, and 1/3 for 2 that has these abilities is not bad. Next up, we have Rowan, Scion of War. This is a really neat card. Obviously, Rowan was a Planeswalker, and if we look at this regular art, you can kind of see this lightning bolt between the Planeswalker symbol. I think it's supposed to mean the de-sparking. I saw that on Will as well, which we'll see here coming up. But she is a human wizard with menace. Tap. Spells you cast this turn that are black and or red cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a super cool ability. Using life loss to make your spells cost a whole lot less is super neat. One of my friends instantly pointed out, by using Necropotence to take a ton of damage, you can cast Torment of Hailfire for a ton, basically for free. Drawing you a bunch of cards and making your opponents have to sack their entire board, that's a win-win to me. Next up, we have Rowan's Grim Search, Ruby Daring Tracker, and Cherie the Numbing Depth. Rowan's Grim Search has Bargain. If this spell was bargained, look at the top 4 cards of your library, then put up 2 back on top of your library in any order, and the rest into your graveyard. Then you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Basically letting you, this bargain lets you fix the top of your library, and then you draw those 2 and lose 2 life. Ruby Daring Tracker is one of the main protagonists in the story, and if you haven't listened to it, I would highly recommend it. It was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed this one. But for a red and a green, you get a human scout with haste, and when Ruby Daring Tracker attacks while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, she gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and can tap to add a red or a green. Not the best card in my opinion. I mean, she's okay. Maybe she's gonna be better in some decks, but I don't know if I would really play this just normally. I don't know. It seems kind of weird. And then Cherie of the Numbing Depths is a legendary Morpho wizard. When Cherie of the Numbing Depths enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. Whenever you tap 1 or more untapped creatures your opponents control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Getting some value for tapping your opponent's stuff is kind of nice. So this is pretty cool. Sky Beast Tracker, Stroke of Midnight, and Sweet Tooth Witch are next, with Sky Beast Tracker as a giant archer with reach, and whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, create a food. I kind of really like that. It's kind of neat. Gives you some food. And next up, Stroke of Midnight. Destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 1/1 white human creature token. That's a pretty cool effect in white. It's destroy target non-land permanent. So if it's a enchantment or an artifact, all your opponent gets is a 1/1 creature. That seems pretty good to me. And Sweet Tooth Witch, with when Sweet Tooth Witch enters the battlefield, create a food. 2, sack a food. Target player loses 2 life. Probably better in limited than anywhere else, but if you need another card in a food deck, you can pick this one up in a pinch. Next up, we have Sir Aramont the Redeemer and Sir Ginger the Meal Ender. I'm very excited to see these 2 cards, especially Sir Ginger Ender of Meals, but I'm really not as impressed as I thought I'd be. So first off, we have Sir Aramont the Redeemer. When Sir Aramont the Redeemer enters battlefield, create a monster roll token. Attach it to target creature you control. Enchanted creatures you control get +1/+1. Pretty cool card, I really like that. But Sir Ginger the Meal Ender, I'm kind of disappointed in. This is a card we got some very early art for, and it's really kind of lacking in what I would really want from this food night. I mean, this seems so much fun. Sir Ginger the Meal Ender has trample, hexproof, and haste as long as an opponent controls a planeswalker, and whenever another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sir Ginger and scry 1. 2 tap, sacrifice Sir Ginger, you gain life equal to its power. For a rare, I'm really not that excited. I mean, if you're playing this as your commander, there's not that many really colors colorless cards. So I guess you're gonna have to go another route artifact-wise other than food, because I'd really love to make this a food deck, but that's not really gonna work. And in addition, whenever you sack a food, you kind of get bad value. You just put a counter on her and scry 1, so this is not that great of a card. And sack it to gain some life, that's not really great. I would have loved to see Trample, Hexproof, and Haste just on it in general. That would have been awesome. This would have been such a fun card to try and build around, but maybe it was just too strong. I don't know. I know that this is kind of in flavor as well, because if you've ever watched the original Eldraine video, Sir Ginger is the partner to the other cookie in that story, and you know, Garuk ends up eating him, so that makes sense why she's so against Planeswalkers. But just play wise, I don't really see this as a really fun card to play, and I'm really disappointed because I was really looking forward to it. Next up, we have Tango Span Lookout, the End, and the Goose Mother. Tango Span Lookout is a really cool card for Enchantress with whenever an aura enters battlefield under control, draw a card. This works surprisingly well in this set because of all the roll cards, but also this would be a pretty cool way to build Enchantress just a little bit different, giving you another card to be able to draw more and more. The End is an instant with this spell costs 2 less to cast if your life total is 5 or less. Exile target creature or planeswalker, search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that permanent and exile them. That player shuffles, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. This isn't the most unique card, but it is kind of cool where if your life total is pretty low, this can come in handy. And finally, the Goose Mother, X green blue, legendary bird hydra. Flying, the Goose Mother enters battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, and when the Goose Mother enters battlefield, create half X food tokens, rounded up. And whenever the Goose Mother attacks, you may sack a food. If you do, draw a card. This is a pretty cool card. It's not the strongest. I think if you're playing any kind of blue-green deck where you're making a ton of mana, if you can already make enough mana to make this like a one-shot, you can pretty much win the game anyways. So just other than having this as like a fun card as a bird goose hydra in your deck, it's fun, but not the best. Next up, we have the Huntsman's Redemption, 3 blind mice, and Thunderous Debut. The Hunter's Redemption is a saga with the first saga. Create a 3/3 beast creature token. Number 2, you may sack a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature, basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And number 3, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. This is a pretty cool card. If you play this on turn 3, by the time you hit turn 5, you could probably have something pretty big on the board in green, and that could actually result in something pretty great. 3 blind mice is a very fun flavor card. I kind of like this, where you create a 1/1 white mouse creature token, and you can create 3 of them with steps 2 and 3 by creating a token that's a copy of target token you control. And then number 3, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. I actually find this probably pretty playable, because if you're able to make bigger tokens or more deadly tokens, being able to copy those for free and then everything getting +1/+1 and vigilance is kind of really awesome. And Thunderous Debut is another bargain card with look at the top 20 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them. If the spell was bargained, put the revealed cards onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put the revealed cards into your hand, then shuffle. Honestly, not the best 8-drop card there is, but if you can put those onto the battlefield, that's pretty good. You can probably get a card that's going to help you win the game or have you win. You know, it doesn't have any mana cap on it. As long as there's something good in the top 20 cards, that's fantastic. Next up is Torch the Tower, Totans, Swarm Piper, and Troublemaker Oof. Torch the Tower is a single red instant with bargain. Torch the Tower deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the spell was bargained, instead it deals 3 damage to that permanent, and you scry 1. If a permanent dealt damage by Torch the Tower would die this turn, exile it instead. This is actually a really good card, and I kind of expect to see this being played in some other formats, or a possibility of it anyways. Being able to deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker is pretty good. In addition, you get to exile that creature and scry 1. This can shut down a lot of decks and really help your opponent, so I really like it. Totans, Swarm Piper, Human Warlock Bard with whenever this creature or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. For 1 in a black target rat you control gains death touch until end of turn. Really cool card. Basically make it so your opponents don't want to block any of your stuff, or you can just kill whatever you want off of their board. And then Troublemaker Oof has, when this Troublemaker Oof enters the battlefield, if it was bargained, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Pretty good card, honestly. I really like that ability. I think 2 mana 2/2 with this ability is pretty strong, but it's just a common, so it could be better. Next up is Troian Gusty Explorer, Twisted Fealty, and Virtue of Knowledge. Troian Gusty Explorer is a Vidalcan scout that adds green blue. Spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value of 5 or greater, or spells with X in their mana cost. Pay a blue and tap it to draw a card and discard a card. The streets of Ravnica were stifling. Eldraine was an endless adventure paved in gold. This is a pretty cool card because we have a Vidalcan in Eldraine, and they probably traveled through the Omen path to get there, so this is really neat and cool to see. Twisted Fealty is a sorcery where you gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, gains haste until end of turn. Create a Wicked Roll token attached to one target creature. This is a pretty cool card, and I like it. It's a little better than those basic steel spells and kind of adds a roll token as well, so I like this idea. And Virtue of Knowledge is an enchantment, which I think is pretty neat. I don't know if I've ever seen an adventure enchantment before, but it has adventure, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose a new target for the copy, which can be very, very powerful. And then the enchantment, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. What? This is pretty good. It is 5 mana, so it's gonna be kind of unplayable in some places, but I can see this being one of the more expensive cards in the set. Being able to double stuff in blue, we haven't really got that before, so I really like this. This is a really cool card. Next up, we have Warehouse Tabby, Agatha of the Vile Cauldron, and Ash Party Crasher. Warehouse Tabby is a cat with whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block, and 1 in a black, Warehouse Tabby gains Death Touch until end of turn. Pretty cool little kitty. Can become a Death Toucher in a pinch and also gains you some value, so I think this is actually pretty strong for just a single black. Agatha of the Vile Cauldron is one of the main witches in the story, and she is a red and a green human warlock. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to activate, where X is Agatha the Vile Cauldron's power. This effect can't reduce the mana value of that cost to be less than 1. 4 red-green other creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and haste until end of turn. Notably, this works on herself, so if you're able to buff her up, you can basically boost all of your creatures for a red and a green later on. And Ash Party Crasher is a Boros human peasant with haste. In Celebration, whenever Ash Party Crasher attacks, if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under control this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Ash. Kind of a cool ability. I don't know, don't really remember this being part of the story, but alright, let's go Ash. And the second of the Kenrith children, we have Will, Scion of Peace, with some pretty cool art as well. Will is definitely the good guy in this story, and while he may not be as strong as Rowan, he, does his best. So this human wizard has vigilance and tap. Spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Will is the other half of his sister, basically, and while she lets you cast stuff for less, when you lose life, he has you gain life. Honestly, I think he might be the stronger one in this case. A little bit easier to lose life, but if you gain life while also reducing your card's spells, maybe you can gain more life and kind of continue this cycle, and it's kind of a really cool idea, and I like it. Next up, we have Beanstalk Worm, Belluna Grand Squall, and Beseech the Mirror. Beanstalker Worm is another adventure card with plant beans that lets you play an additional land this turn, and then when you cast it for its creature, you get a 5/4 with reach. Probably pretty good in limited, but not really too much great anywhere else. But maybe she's that good with Bellum Grand Squaller, which is a green, a blue, and a red legendary creature Giant Noble. This legendary creature has an adventure itself with Seek Thrill, 2 green, blue, and red. Mill 7 cards, then put all cards that have an adventure from among the milled cards into your hand. That seems pretty powerful. It also has trample, and permanent spells you cast that have an adventure cost 1 less to cast. I really like that. This is kind of a cool adventure commander, and I hope we get another card like this in the set, or maybe something else to benefit. And Beseech the Mirror is 1 black sorcery with bargain. Search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If this spell was bargained, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. The spell's mana value 4 or less. Put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't cast this way. A black tutor lets you instantly play whatever you get. It's okay. I mean, I would prefer Demonic Tutor any day, but this can definitely work in a pinch, and I bet there's some cool combos you can make with this card. Next up, we have Besuited Knight, Blossomy Tortoise, and Break the Spell. Besuited Knight has Betrothed the Beast, sorcery, adventure. Create a royal roll token attached to target creature you control. And then it is also a 3/3 for 4. I mean, I think the best part about this card is the flavor text. You are no monster to me, my love. But other than that, I'm not a huge fan of it. Blossoming Tortoise, on the other hand, is really cool. Whenever Blossoming Tortoise enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards, then return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less to cast, and land creatures you control get +1/+1. I'm a sucker for lands. I really like this card, and this is going to go in one of my land decks. And Break the Spell is a white instant with destroy target enchantment. If a permanent you control or a token was destroyed this way, draw a card. I really love that. Some benefit. It's only 1 white. Seems really powerful to me. Next up, we have Conceited Witch, Cursed Courtier, and Decadent Dragon. Conceited Witch has Price of Beauty, which is a sorcery adventure. Create a Wicked Roll token attached to a target creature you control, and it's a 2/3 with Menace. A little bit better. Menace is hard to evade, so kind of like that. Cursed Courtier, creature human noble with lifelink, and whenever Cursed Courtier enters battlefield, create a Cursed Roll token. Attach it. Enchanted creature is a 1/1. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work too well with making it a 1/1, but oh well. And Decadent Dragon has Expensive Taste, an instant where you exile the top 2 cards of an opponent's library face down. You may look and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. And it also gains Flying and Trample, and whenever Decadent Dragon attacks, create a treasure token. I like this guy. He's trying to be pretty, and definitely is. Next we have Elvis Archivist, an Emberth Veteran, along with an Evolving Wilds, which, you know, that's not new, but cool new art, so gonna talk about it. Elvish Archivist is an Elf Artificer with whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under control, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Elf Archivist. This ability triggers only once each turn. And whenever 1 or more enchantments enter the battlefield under control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. For 2 mana, this could probably be pretty fun, but it's not going to be a staple in any Enchantress deck with that limited effect to it. Emberth Veteran is a creature, human knight for a single red. 1, sacrifice Emberth Veteran, create a young hero roll token attached to another target creature. I like this card. It's pretty cool. This girl teaching this kid how to fight. And Evolving Wilds, we all know what it does. Sack it, search for a basic land, put on the battlefield tap. Pretty cool card. I love this new art. It's definitely Eldraine themed and probably one of my favorite art. And next up we have Already of the Charmed Apple with some kind of interesting looking art. I kind of laughed when I saw that because it does look kind of interesting, but this is 1 white black legendary creature human warlock with each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. Whether you're putting auras on your own creatures or your opponents so they can't attack you, you can take advantage of that second part by making your opponents lose a lot of life and you gain a ton. I can see so many different ways to build around this card, especially with these new roll effect that are auras themselves. This is super neat, and I can't wait to see more cards from this set to help support it. Next up, we have Expel the Interlopers, Fairy Dream Thief, and Farsight Ritual. Expel the Interlopers is a 5 mana sorcery which choose a number between 0 and 10, destroy all creatures with power greater than or equal to the chosen number. If you're playing a deck that has limited power, I can definitely see this as a super great board wipe. Fairy Dream Thief has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. And for 2 and a black, exile Fairy Dream Thief from your graveyard, you draw a card and lose a life. This seems okay. I'm not really sure I would play this, but it's cool if you got the right deck for it to go in. And Farsight Ritual is 2 and a blue with Bargain. You may sack an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast spell. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. If the spell was bargained for, look at the top 8 cards of your library instead. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Pretty fun. Helps you dig a little deeper if you're willing to bargain. Fawns Bane Troll. This troll has, whenever it enters the battlefield, create a monster roll token and attach it to it. 1, sack an aura attached to Fawns Bane Troll. Fawns Bane Troll fights a target creature you don't control. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a pretty cool card that takes advantage of getting rid of that roll and giving you another benefit, which I haven't seen yet and I really like. Frolicking Familiar, Galleon Pie Wielder, and Glass Casket are next. Frolicking Familiar is an Otter Wizard with Blow Off Some Steam. Blow Off Some Steam deals 1 damage to any target, and when you cast it, it is flying, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, Frolicking Familiar gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Galleon Pie Wielder is a Dwarf Knight with First Strike and Celebration. Galleon Pie Wielder has double strike as long as 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn. This celebration mechanic we've already seen once, so maybe this is going to pop up more and more, and we'll get some cool cards to build around it with. And Glass Casket is an artifact with whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or less until this leaves the battlefield. Not the best thing to steal creatures with, but it's pretty cheap and it's going to be pretty effective. Next is Greta Sweettooth Scourge, Jonah Apprentice Sorcerer, and Knight of Dove. Greta Sweettooth Scourge is a human warrior with whenever it enters the battlefield, create a food. Green, sack a food, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, activate only as a sorcery, and 1 and a black, sack a food, you may draw a card and lose a life. I actually really like this card. It gives you a lot of possibilities. It's playing those major food colors, which is black and green and a little bit of white in there, and I really like it. Joanna, Apprentice Sorcerer, legendary creature, human wizard with you may look at the top card of your library anytime, one of my favorite effects in Magic, and once each turn you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from the top of your library. This is a pretty cool card. I can see this playing out in a couple decks pretty well, but I don't know how much of a fan I am otherwise. And lastly, Knight of Doves, creature, human knight. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 bird creature token with flying. Our last witch is Helda of the Icy Crown, legendary creature, human warlock. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay 1. When you do, choose one. Create a 4/4 white and blue elemental creature token, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or scry 2, then draw a card. That's pretty epic, actually. Tapping an opponent's creature, paying 1, and then getting a 4/4, or putting a +1/+1 on every creature you control, or scrying 2 and drawing a card seems really powerful to me, and I love to see how people build this deck. This is pretty neat. And next, our main protagonist of the story is Kellen the Fey-Blooded, legendary creature, human fairy with Birthright Boon. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. And then when you cast this guy, he has double strike, and other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen of Fey-Blooded. This is a pretty strong little card. This is kind of not a completely new take on Boros, but it's definitely really different. It's not something we've seen before, and honestly, I would love to build a Boros deck, and this might be my first one. They're kind of also similar. I've just been avoiding it, but Kellen is a pretty cool card, and I'd love to see this again. Lich Knight's Conquest, Living Lectern, and Lord Skitter's Blessing are our last cards from the main set before we move on to the Enchanting Tales card. Lich Knight's Conquest is a sorcery with sack any number of artifacts, enchantments, and/or tokens. Return that many creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. I love this effect. I'll sack all of my tokens to get back all of my great stuff back to the battlefield. It's not too overly priced for this ability either, so goodbye some of my other recursion cards and welcome Lich Knight's Conquest. Living Lectern is a artifact creature construct with 1 sack Living Lectern, draw a card, create a sorcery roll token, and attach it to up to 1 other target creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a pretty cool little card. Along with it being kind of a okay blocker, gives you some benefit, maybe something to do with yeah, I really like it. And lastly, Lord Skitter's Blessing is an enchantment with Lord Skitter's Blessing enters battlefield, create a Wicked Roll token, attach it to a target creature you control, and then at the beginning of your draw step, if you control an enchantment creature, you lose 1 life and draw an additional card. 1 in a black to just draw an additional card if you control an enchanted creature, and this makes an enchanted creature? Yes, please. I really love this effect, and this is definitely going in my Enchantress deck. Now, finally, we have these Enchanting Tales cards, and I know we've already run pretty long on this video, so let me try and get through these as quickly as possible. First off, we have Bitter Blossom with some awesome new art. This is a great card, especially with some of the effects in this set, so I really love it. Next up is Blood Moon, which is just an all-around cool card. Not the best in all decks because all non-basics turn into mountains, but if all you're doing is running basics, mess up your opponent's game, why not? Next up, we have Copy Enchantment, which does exactly what it says and copies an enchantment. Seems pretty great to me. And after that, we have Defense of the Heart, one of my favorite green enchantments that I just don't play enough, and I don't think enough people play in general. But if your opponent has 3 or more creatures, at the beginning of your upkeep, sack it and pull the best 2 creatures out of your deck. This can totally be a win con super early in the game, or just get some combo pieces out that really help you out. Next, we have Fiery Emancipation, triples the damage dealt to permanents or players. Really powerful. And next to that is Garruk's Uprising. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw. Creatures you control have trample. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters battlefield, you draw a card. One of my favorite draw spells in green. Next up, we have Grave Pact, which actually just got reprinted in Commander Masters, which I don't really understand them reprinting it again here, but why not? Super great. After that, we have Griffin Airy, which if you gain 3 or more life, you create a 2/2 Griffin creature token. Kindred Discovery, which you choose a creature type, and then whenever a creature of the chosen type enters battlefield, you draw a card. Land Tax, which is a super great card that I think also just got reprinted pretty recently, maybe in Commander Masters, so that's awesome to see this here again. Oppression, which is a super powerful black card that says whenever a player plays a spell, that player discards a card from his or her hand, so super frightening, but it is also symmetrical. And next we have Polluted Bonds with Irietti, the cool new witch from the set that says whenever a land enters battlefield under an opponent's control, that player loses 2 and you gain 2. And right after that, we have Sneak Attack, which is a great card in any big red stompy deck. And lastly, we have Spreading Sea and Unnatural Growth with Enchant a Land. When Spreading Sea enters battlefield, draw a card, and enchanted land is an island in unnatural growth, which at the beginning of each combat double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. We got some amazing cards today. I can't believe some of these reprints. I can't believe some of these cards coming out. I am kind of 50-50 on the set right now. We did get some really good stuff, but we also got some stuff that's like, did you really need to make this? So I'm quite excited to see what the next couple days hold, and I hope if you watch this till the end, you really enjoyed. I know this video is super long, and I appreciate it if you watched it till the end, but there was just so much to cover, I didn't have any other choice. So thank you so much, and if you liked this, please subscribe. It would really help me out. I'm going to try to put these out every day of spoiler season, and just keep you up to date with all the cool stuff that's coming out. But that's it. So let's look at today's Scryfall card of the day with Armed and Armored. The dwarves of Axgard seldom have reason to leave their impregnable underground kingdom, but when they do, they go in force. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.